Imagine walking through marble corridors bathed in golden dusk, a library where every breath carries a trace of ancient ink and burning oil. Tell me where and when you're listening tonight. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and let the quiet sands of Alexandria cradle your mind. The day was ending, and the sky, always generous in Alexandria, had softened into lavender and rust. I stood at the edge of the courtyard, just outside the library's western wing, where the pomegranate trees bent slightly with the breeze off the sea. I liked to begin my evenings here, where the scent of fig leaves and dust calmed the racing of my thoughts. My sandals, worn thin from the marble floors, made no sound on the stone, that silence. It was like parchment before ink, waiting. Inside the courtyard, the last of the scribes were gathering their tools. Styluses tapped gently as they rolled scrolls and brushed away sand, used to blot the ink. One of them, a boy no older than 16, paused and looked to the sky. I followed his gaze. The stars hadn't yet emerged, but the first lanterns flickered from the harbor, just past the colonnade. A gentle voice, older than mine, once told me, "If you listen carefully, dusk in the library speaks in languages lost to time." I remembered that as I moved slowly past the bronze doors, always slightly ajar for air to pass through the papyrus shelves. The air inside was cooler, tinged with the scent of cedarwood boxes and burning olive oil. My fingers traced the edge of a shelf, where scrolls lay curled like sleeping serpents. Some bore symbols I could read. Others were a mystery even to the philosophers who came from far cities to marvel at our collection. Stillness was our currency here. Even the mice made no noise. There was comfort in this routine. Even as the world outside changed, rulers, weather, tides, the breath of the library stayed constant, a hush, deep and enveloping, as if the walls remembered every whisper, every theory, every forgotten name. I lit a small clay lamp on the lectern by the window. The flame danced low, casting ripples across the mosaic floor. From here, I could see the roof tiles of the city turning amber, and beyond them, the indigo line of the sea. We didn't fear the night in this place. We welcomed it, for it brought questions and dreams, and the kind of thoughts that only silence invites. Outside, a gull called once and was gone. Inside, the fire crackled faintly, like a voice too old to raise itself. And so began another evening in Alexandria, among the scrolls, the shadows, and the slow turning of time. The second hour of twilight was my favorite. Not quite night, but no longer day. Just that lingering in-between, where the world softened into quieter shapes. I walked slowly through the eastern archive. My lantern, held low, cast gentle waves of light along the rows of wooden shelves. Each held 1,000 scrolls, bundled in linen or leather. Some cracked at the edges like old skin. I knew them not by labels, but by touch, by scent, and by the faint memory of when I last opened each one. There was a scroll near the back that always called to me at dusk. Not the grand works of Plato or Herodotus, but an older one, unsigned. The parchment was brittle, its ink faded to the color of dried wine. It spoke of stars, of how sailors once read them not just for direction, but to choose when to grieve, when to speak, when to love. I unwrapped it slowly, breathing through my nose. The scent was deep, of salt, resin, and the ghost of someone's longing. Reading by oil light was not easy. The letters shimmered with each flicker, as if resisting clarity. But I didn't mind. Clarity was not always the goal here. Sometimes it was enough to sit to listen to the spaces between words. I remembered a visitor once, an old man from Rhodes, who whispered to me, "Books do not just preserve knowledge, they hold emotion, stored in silence." He had wept while reading a scroll on botany, not for the plants, I think, but for the simplicity of someone writing about roots while the world outside burned. The library held scrolls on everything: architecture, astronomy, medicine, love spells, sea charts, recipes for preserving figs, even a guide to the dreams of dogs, written in Egyptian demotic. Some believed it nonsense. I believed it necessary. Who else would keep such things, if not us? My lamp flickered low, casting my shadow onto the curved walls. It looked like another version of myself, taller, stiller, perhaps wiser. For a moment, I watched it. Sometimes I wondered who I would be if I'd never walked through these doors, if I'd been a sailor or a potter or simply a farmer who never learned letters. But then I heard it, the soft hush of a breeze slipping through the cracks in the stone. It rustled the scrolls ever so gently. I closed my eyes. That sound, that movement, it reminded me, even the most silent place breathes. And so I remained there a while longer, letting the shadows grow longer, the silence deepen, and the warmth of memory hold me like a cloak. By now, the upper chambers were dark. Most had gone home, scribes to their families, philosophers to their rented rooms near the docks. Only I remained, descending the narrow stairs that led to the lower vaults. These steps were worn smooth by centuries of feet. Some believed the vaults were a myth, others feared them. But I came here often, especially when the world above felt too loud, even in its silence. Down there, the air changed, cooler, damp with the scent of mineral-rich stone. The walls no longer held shelves, but alcoves carved from sandstone, each cradling a chest or scroll wrapped in cloth, too fragile for daily handling. I brought no flame. Down here, the darkness was whole, and I let it hold me. I moved by memory. Left past the sarcophagus we kept as a counterweight to humidity, right where the floor dipped slightly, always slick with condensation. At the back wall, I stopped. There, hidden in an unmarked recess, was a scroll known to very few. We called it the Breath of Sand, though its original name was lost. It was not long, just a poem, written by a woman whose name had faded from every record. But her voice still hummed in the ink. I knelt and unwrapped it, careful with every fold. I didn't need to read it anymore. I had memorized the rhythm, the way the lines swayed like dunes in wind. To sleep, I return not to silence, but to the hum of earth's remembering. Each grain of sand holds a name. Each night, one name whispers back to me. That part always brought stillness to my chest, the kind that only sorrow and reverence can bring together. Not far from me, water dripped slowly from the ceiling, a pulse, a rhythm, like a clock, though no timekeeper would set it. I leaned back against the stone, closed my eyes, and for a few breaths, I was not a librarian, not a keeper of ink or scrolls or secrets. I was just still, present, cradled by ancient air and the words of someone who had once watched this same dusk and dared to write of it. The deeper I sat in the dark, the clearer I felt her near, not as a ghost, but as a memory made whole by someone remembering her. Maybe that was our true task here, not to preserve facts, but to remember the feel of someone's voice when they believed they might be forgotten. But this night has not yet ended. Back above ground, I moved to the northern wing, a space few visited after dark. It was once a debating chamber, now mostly still. The marble seats bore the weight of forgotten arguments, the walls inscribed with faint etchings of older dialects. In one alcove, under a half-crumbled arch, sat what we called the philosopher's desk, not because it belonged to any one thinker, but because so many had left traces there, a half-scribed formula, a sketch of a star's path, a prayer in Greek, just a single line. Let my thoughts find stillness. I sat at the desk, placing my lantern gently beside me. The flame made a small dome of light in the otherwise velvet dark. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the distant cries of gulls circling the harbor, lazy, echoing, like questions left unanswered. On this desk was always a fresh sheet of papyrus. The keepers replaced it weekly. No rule said we had to write on it, but most of us did, eventually. Something about the quiet here invited it. I reached for the reed pen, dipped it slowly in ink, and paused. What was there left to write? After days filled with cataloguing theories on breath, stars, honey's use in healing wounds, after listening to arguments about the soul shape and the weight of virtue, what could one more voice add? But still, I wrote, not for publication, not for posterity, just for presence. Tonight, the silence feels kind. The pages breathe with more patience than people. I am tired, but not empty. Each word felt like drawing water from a well, not to quench thirst, but simply to hear the splash echo back. One night, months before, I'd found a different hand, had written something simple. I miss my brother. He used to bring me olives wrapped in fig leaves. No signature, no philosophy, just memory, as raw and tender as any treatise on love. Sometimes, this library wasn't about knowledge. It was about anchoring ourselves in the world, one inked breath at a time. Outside, the moon rose high. Its light filtered through the colonnade, casting long, slanted stripes across the floor. I let my eyes follow them, tracing the edges of shadow and marble until they vanished into each other. And in that soft half-light, the alcove no longer felt lonely. It felt shared by all who had passed through, by those who would someday come. I stood slowly, letting the pen rest. The night was deepening, and the final chapter waited. Let us follow its quiet call. The hour was late, perhaps past midnight. No clocks chimed here. Time passed through scent and silence, the fading of lamp oil, the deepening stillness, the soft crackle of wick meeting air. I returned to the central hall. The dome above was painted in shades of cobalt and ash, once meant to resemble the heavens. Time had worn it down, but on clear nights like this, the stars outside mirrored the faded constellations inside. A conversation across centuries. I stood beneath it, letting my gaze rise unfocused, my breathing slowed. This was where I always ended my nights, where the heart of the library beat its slowest rhythm. The floor beneath was cool alabaster, and my bare feet made no sound. I lowered myself onto a cushion left near one of the great cedar pillars. The scent of that wood, sweet, dry, a little bitter, was the smell of memory here. It lingered on robes, on hands, even on dreams. I leaned back, and for a moment I allowed myself to let go. No scrolls to carry, no translations to decipher, no lost authors to chase, just breath and stone and silence. Outside, the breeze stirred the hanging lanterns. They swayed slightly, their chains whispering, not enough to wake anything, just enough to remind me that the world moved still, even in quiet. And as my eyelids grew heavier, I remembered something an old keeper once said, as we closed the library after a long night. "Every book is a cradle," he whispered. "Every page a soft hum. If you listen closely, they'll lull you better than any song." He was right. The scrolls, the shelves, the sand-swept stones, they didn't just hold knowledge, they held rest, a deep, ancestral rest, the kind the mind recognizes not as escape, but as return. And so I let myself drift. Among the scrolls, beneath the dome, under the watch of stars that had seen this library born, and might still see it long after I'm gone. Tonight, I was not alone. I was one voice among many, one silence among countless others, one breath, returning softly into sleep. As you drift into sleep, let the gentle wisdom of Alexandria cradle you. Its scrolls may fade, but their calm endures within you. If this journey soothed you, subscribe for more histories to cradle your rest.